is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Back with some more Final Fantasy 16 gameplay for you. And today I'm going to be talking about a bunch of villains I think were really underdeveloped and should have been a lot more complex and epic than they actually were in the game. Now, just for, spoilers warning, there will be spoilers in this thing. So if you have not played and beaten the game, I recommend turning off the video until after you beat it. Then you can check it out. But without further ado, let's jump right into this. Now, as I said before, I've had a few things that I feel like should have been a little bit different in this game, whether it's characters, how they should have been done. But with the villains, I actually feel like this is actually kind of one of the weaker aspects of this game. There are some villains that I think are pretty well done and maybe should have had more time. But then there's a lot of villains that I feel like either A, they're never capitalized on, or B, they start them off strong, but they just never really do much outside of that and are kind of really bland, boring, and forgettable and should have been a lot more entertaining and just rememberable as a villain, because as I said, Final Fantasy always had a lot of rememberable villains, but unfortunately there's not really a lot of rememberable villains in this game, even the ones that you're supposed to really take serious. I just feel like it's more all flair and style but no substance. So without further ado, let's jump into the first one I have a problem with. The first villain I have a problem with that I think is really underdeveloped is Imran. Now, the funny part about him is you don't even know who he is until he's finally mentioned right before you do this mission with the second Mother Crystal. And Jill basically hypes him up as this really evil, malicious person that's done all these bad things, and he rules the Iron Kingdom and basically is the reason why she was enslaved for all these years. But the problem is, when you actually get to him, he's just another dude. There's nothing really stands out or is special about him. And just as quickly as you see him, he's as quickly killed and taken care of. Like, he's just a guy who just does things. Like, and most of the stuff he says or he does is just like stuff you never really see. You just hear about. Like, he does ungod awful things. But I'm sorry, just putting a couple of dead bodies on a altar doesn't really make you menacing. Like, I feel like there should have been a whole segment where you go to the Iron Kingdom and actually see the atrocities firsthand and actually get to see firsthand what he does, because there's nothing threatening about him. And as I say, he's just a generic dude who can easily be killed. I don't even know if he can even fight, to be honest with you, because he doesn't fight. He just hides behind a bunch of, generic looking bad guys, and there's nothing about him that makes you feel like, oh god, he's really good. He's just basically, I won't even call it villain of the month, more like villain of the episode, and that's it. And as I said before, he's very forgettable. He should have been just shown a lot more beforehand, shown the atrocities he'd done, and actually been more of a threat, because, as I said, there's nothing threatening about him. Honestly, I kind of play, why didn't Jill take him out a long time ago? Yeah, I know he was hiding behind children and stuff like that, but honestly, I just feel like he could have been done a lot more menacing, a lot more terrifying, but he's just way too generic. And for someone that has that big of a backstory for Jill, he should have been a lot more epic in that. His whole thing, because as they didn't even get a fight, he just dies in a cutscene just like any other generic enemy. But yeah, Imran is very, very underwhelming and extremely disappointing as a whole in Final Fantasy 16. But on to the next one. We got Annabelle here, and basically the problem with her is I actually liked her a lot. After the prologue, everyone's like, oh my god, I hope she dies. He's terrible, evil, and everything. And obviously she's all for, bloodlines, continuing the bloodline, and that's great. I have no problem with that. But the problem is, it's just the conclusion. Like, up until you finally get to her, she just, like, when you get to the end of her, it's just like, it's too easy of a resolution. It's just like, she goes out way too easy. I know everyone's like, oh, I want them to die and all. I don't have a problem with that, but I just feel like it would have been a lot better if we actually put her down, or even worse, what I actually think is force her to live with the people she looks down upon. That would have driven her crazy, but to me, it just feels like her conclusion is just too easy. Not to mention seeing her act all overly hysterical compared to the same person who just looked down and acted all like really stoic and mean and menacing, and then have her turn to that. It just felt really a quick resolution and not satisfying in a good way. To me, as hyped up as she was early on, just really underwhelming at the end of it. So it just went out way too easy, way too quick. The last two, and I'm going to pair them together, is Barnabas and Ultima. And these are basically, I guess, the two major villains. And I'll be honest with you, this is probably the biggest disappointment for me. And I'll be the first one to say, I think Ultima is one of the most disappointing main villains I've had in a long time in Final Fantasy because there's nothing about him that really stands out to me that I really remember. And Barnabas, I think, can stand out, but he's never given a chance to stand out other than looking cool and stuff. I'll go with Ultima first. The problem I have with Ultima is like, and I'm not, don't take this the wrong way, I'm not criticizing his voice or anything. I just feel like it's because of that voice, that like really, dead, generic speaking. It doesn't stand out. There's like when you hear Sephiroth speak, his voice is really iconic. Like it really stands out, and you're just like, oh crap, he really, and he could be talking about anything, but this feels so menacing. But Ultima, I don't feel menacing about him. I feel like I'm looking at a lifeless husk. I know obviously he's got a god complex. He looks down on all his subjects, and basically, they all should ultimately serve him, no questions asked. And I get all that. I have no problem with that. But it's more just with the presentation of it. Every time you hear him talk, it feels like one of those people you see that has like been brainwashed and is just like reading a bunch of like jargon based on whoever brainwashed him wants them to follow. That's what he just looks like. Everything is about your destiny, mythos, and what you're supposed to do, and yada yada yada. And unfortunately, that whole thing moves on to the person that serves him the hardest, which would be Barnabas. And Barnabas, once again, obviously is a lot more compelling and interesting than Ultima. And the problem I have with Barnabas is all he is basically just a mindless slave. And I don't have a problem with that, but the problem is that's all he is. All he does is monologue all day talking about, you need to do this, you need to serve God, yada, yada, yada. He has nothing outside of that whole objective. Every time you meet and talk to him, that's all he talks about. He doesn't have anything outside of that one-track mind goal he has. And I feel like he could be such an epic character because he's hyped up to be like he's this guy that came from lands across the sea, and he came and he took over, and his skills were a testament to how good he is, how he took over as a king. And you get this whole thing that he's so ambitious and stuff, but in reality, he's just somebody who just is following Ultima and basically trying to do whatever it is Ultima wants and not questioning anything about it. Like, he just basically is a mindless slave, ironically enough. And the problem I have with this is, like, he's got the aesthetic. He looks cool. His icon is awesome. But he never gives me that sense of, like, I don't know, like, something outside of that. Like, to me, I'll just say it to you right now, this is a little bit off topic here, but I feel like Barnabas should have been the main villain of this game, not Ultima. I feel like it should have started the way it did, with Barnabas serving Ultima, but little by little we learn why he serves him, why he has such unshakable faith in him. And we get some scenes, that we try to put two and two together. There's obviously a weird scene where he's like, where Ultima is changing different forms between like Kupka and Benedicta, and then it goes to him, and then it goes to his mother, and maybe there's something with his mother, but we never really get it. But what I think they should have done is they should have had like basically Barnabas serve Ultima, and he's basically there for Ultima, and he's basically trying to create this vessel. But over time, as he encounters Clive more often, I think he should have encountered Clive more times than not, he starts to get really frustrated with Clive because Clive is not going to budge. He's still not budging. He's still not going in with all this. And he's like, why is he denying this? But what's making him more frustrated is he starts to get jealous of Clive because he's just like, he's a so-called vessel and he won't accept, God's will and way. But yet Ultima is still willing to forgive that. It's all fine and dandy and all. And maybe Barnabas starts to get a little jealous and gets agitated. He's like, you know what? Why is my God so favoring this man when he has done nothing but disrespect him, and I've been nothing but loyal to him for so long? So maybe at some point in time, Barnabas eventually uses an opportunity and just gets really fed up with all of them and says, you know what? Maybe you're not really the God I should be following. Maybe I should be the God itself because I have more of an ambition, more of a will to do something that's necessary, and you're just this mindless husk who just goes on with, hey, the vessel's going to do this, do that, and this somehow takes Ultima's powers and puts his own personality and identity, because I feel like he could be a lot more menacing and do a lot more things, whereas Ultima kind of just sits there and, appears and reappears. I feel like Barnabas is someone that would take a lot more action and actually come in person and do a lot more things. Like, I could see him being so much more of a menacing villain and stuff. Because when I see Altima and he's just talking to me, I just feel like a lifeless, boring, just husk. It's like I just don't really like. I'm not intimidated by it. I just really don't care. It's just the only thing he gives me is a decent boss fight. I'll say because that's one thing about Barnabas. His boss fight to me was the biggest letdown ever, especially after the Bahamut boss fight. It's like really that's how it goes out. Not to mention Barnabas goes out way too easily. I feel like he should have been a guy that becomes a recurring enemy that comes in and eventually, usurps his master and becomes his own thing, tries to put his own will in the world. Because I feel like he could have been like maybe the ultimate menace. And as I said, you'd have to rewrite the story a lot for that. But to me, I just feel like he could do a lot more menacing things. Like maybe, he puts Clive in a situation where he has to pick between people he cares about because of what Barnabas can do. Because he's really powerful. I mean, he could hold, his brother or his love, his life on the line, and maybe forcing Clive to choose between that or something like that. But I just see him doing stuff like that. But instead, he's cool, he's powerful, but that's it. There's not really anything outside of his whole goal and objective. But that is my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you think the villains should have been a lot more than they are? Let me know down in the comment section down below. But thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you guys back in the next one. Thank you, and I'll see you later. Peace.